Okay. A professor in England told his students back in 2015 not to read to their children because that gave them an unfair advantage. When I read about this story, I thought to myself, exactly. So I'm not trying to make childhood fair. I am doing everything in my power to raise leaders. So here is a list of 18 unfair advantages that I give to my children. And I do this on purpose. No, life is not fair, but these children have been entrusted to me. And so I want to make sure that I am preparing them as best I can for the world that lies beyond my door. So if you want to build this same type of structure and intentionality in your own homeschool, make sure to watch my free masterclass. It's called The Framework I Wish I Had 18 years ago when everything was falling apart. I will show you the exact framework that I use to run a calm but also highly intentional homeschool for my 11 children. 3 of them have already graduated, so there's only 8 at home, but you understand what I'm saying here. The link is in the description. It's free. Let's get started. This first section is all about habits of the mind. These are the things that I am doing to give my children an intellectual advantage. Unfortunately, a lot of kids are not getting this same advantage, but I'm not responsible for all of the children. I'm only responsible for the children under my roof. I read aloud to them every day. So my children are getting read aloud to a lot. They're getting it from me. I'm reading Proverbs to them in the morning. I'm reading different Bible passages. We are reciting catechism together. We're doing their school read alouds, and also their father reads to them. A lot of times at dinner, he's reading scripture as well, but he is also reading chapter books to them in the evening. So our children are getting a lot of reading, reading aloud, and I even count audiobooks under this category. But the fact of the matter is they are hearing high quality literature. It's going into their heads. It's forming their speech patterns. It's forming their language patterns. It is forming their minds, because what we're reading to them obviously is not twaddle. It's high quality literature. Even the board books that I'm reading to Mary Eleanor are important. They are helping her to form her own language patterns. She's only 15 months old, so she's not talking yet, but she is starting to say words. But being read to is important at any age. So even the baby is getting the same advantage, the same unfair advantage. I require them to memorize scripture and poetry. Okay, so like I was saying, we do memorize scripture. We memorize catechism questions and answers, and they're memorizing poetry throughout the year with their curriculum. I'm thankful to be using a curriculum that does have this as part of the actual plan, so I'm not having to go out and find poems for them to memorize or anything like that. It actually is included in the plan. If yours doesn't have that though, just start with nursery rhymes. Those are fun. They rhyme. Children love picking those up, but memorizing is so important, and it definitely gives an unfair advantage. I teach them how to speak like adults, which means eye contact, full sentences, and persuasive reasoning. It starts young. So there's not, this is not something that I experience regularly anymore. I don't have anybody coming up to me when they find out that I homeschool and asking, well, what about socialization? I know that that was a very popular question 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and maybe it is still popular for brand new homeschool moms who maybe look like they're not entirely sure of what they're doing, and people just feel more comfortable asking questions to people who don't necessarily look like they have a full grasp of what they're doing. What I'm trying to say is I'm not sure if it is just a sign of times changing and more people homeschooling, or if it's just that I exude confidence and people don't really ask me silly questions anymore. But the socialization question, I feel like really needs to die if it still is being asked. As a homeschool child, at least in my household, my children are interacting with adults way more often than they are interacting with children their own age, besides the children in our own house. We have all of the ages here. But it's really important that our children don't just know how to speak to other kids. Like, what good does that actually do our children? Of course, we want our children to have friendships and things like that, but it is way more important for my children to know how to speak to the 75-year-old lady at church, or to talk to the older gentleman that comes and picks up some of my boys to do yard work. Those are the kinds of speech interactions that I want my kids to have, because they're actually growing and benefiting from that. So I am making sure that my kids get plenty of opportunities to talk to adults, to interact with adults, and to learn proper manners. I train them to sit still and pay attention, because attention is a lost art and a secret weapon. You know, I talked in this video over here about ways to help teach your child to focus. I talked about this a lot in this video, but focus and attention span, these are skills. We're not really just born knowing and understanding how to focus. It is something that really does need to be taught. So I make sure to teach my children how to do this. I make sure from a very young age, my children can sit in church quietly and listen to the pastor. I don't want my children just in church coloring books and doing little handcrafts and things like that. They actually are supposed to be paying attention. So this is something that is a fantastic skill for our children to be learning, and it is definitely going to give them an unfair advantage when the vast majority of parents out there think that their kid is either born with the ability to focus or not. So if you are being intentional and actually teaching your child how to do this, and again, if you need help, check out that video that I linked. But if you are actually being intentional about teaching your child to focus, it absolutely gives them an unfair advantage. I teach them how to learn, not just what to learn. Okay, so this topic is actually one that is a little bit, there was actually a Memoria Press Classical Etc. podcast that went into greater detail on this whole sentence. I teach them how to learn, not just what to learn. Here's the thing, as homeschool moms, we're doing both. We're not just teaching them how to learn. We are teaching them what to learn also. We're being very intentional with our curriculum choices for a reason. But we want our children to be curious, and we want them to ask the questions why or how. Or who, what, when, why, like all of those journalism questions. If your children are not asking those questions, then I would say that you need to focus on that, because that's really important. It's important for our children to be curious and to ask why and to ask how, and not just to accept something at face value. We want our children to be truth seekers. And again, this is a skill that has to be taught. So, this is part of what we're doing as homeschool moms. We should be doing. We should be teaching our children how to recognize fallacies. We should be teaching our children logic. We need to be teaching them that persuasive rhetoric. These are all things that are not being taught at all, at least in the public school system. If your children are attending a classical school, chances are they are getting some of this. And this really starts in the middle school and high school ages. This isn't necessarily for the elementary years, but during the elementary years, you definitely want to be instilling that curiosity in them. That curiosity, asking the why and asking the how. If your children are going like this all day, asking you questions about what you have taught them, that is actually a good thing. I know that sometimes your ears may want to fall off, but we want to encourage that, because curiosity didn't really kill the cat. Curiosity is the one that, the curiosity-driven child is the one that is actually going to be a leader one day. So don't stifle that. Okay, so next we're going to talk all about habits of the home that give your child an unfair advantage. They have a wake-up time and daily responsibilities, so that means cooking, cleaning, babysitting, yard work. They carry weight in the home. Okay, this is so important. There was a Harvard study done. This was a very comprehensive study done across decades, and it clearly showed that children who are given responsibility and duties in the home, meaning chores and housework, were so much more successful in life than children who were not required to do chores and housework. So I'm not just making this up. I'm not just saying this because I want my house cleaned. I'm saying this because it is so true. It is so important to give children duties and responsibilities, to require them to wake up at a certain time. Now, on Saturdays, do I let them sleep in? Yes, absolutely, of course. During the summer, do I let them sleep in more? Yes, absolutely. They need their sleep. They also need to be going to bed at a decent time. But we are talking here about making sure that our children have regular chores, that they are contributing members of the household. Okay, they are not just consumers, they are also producers. We are a family, we work together, This is our home. Okay. This is not my husband's and my home. This is our home, and we all take care of it because we all make messes. I make them finish what they start, especially when it's hard. Okay, so this is really important too, and this is a skill that we are seeing decreasing year after year after year, and it is grit. We have got to teach our children how to have grit and determination. I have seen way too many children that think just because something is hard that they should stop. No, that's actually when you push. When something gets hard, it means that there's most likely a reward on the other side, and you just have to keep going. And we have got to teach our children how to do this. And one of the ways to do that is through the chores. I'm just saying, like, these kind of fit together very nicely. But if you are teaching your child how to push through and how to do hard things, you are absolutely giving them an unfair advantage. And we need to be doing more of that. Next one is I let them fail and make them try again. No rescuing. Okay, this is really important too. Your children need to understand how to fail, because failing at something is actually how we get better and how we learn lessons. So if you are always swooping in to rescue your child because you don't want your child to get into trouble or you don't want your child to suffer consequences, you need to stop. Our children need to know what failure feels like. They need to experience it while they are at home, so that once they are out in the world on their own, they're not completely shattered by it. Our children need to learn how to fail, pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and try again. This is how we produce resilient children. So do not swoop in to save the day. Let them feel the sting of failure. That means if they get a really poor score on a test, you don't say, oh, it's okay, you can just take it again and I will give you, the higher grade. No, that's not what it means. A lot of times parents will average. So they will give their child an opportunity to study the material again and take the test, but then they will average the worst score with the better score. Well, hopefully it's better. And then they will record that. But you have to let your child experience this. This is why, glossing up the transcripts is really not a good idea, because if you just tell your child, oh yeah, you got A's in everything so that they can get into college, what are they going to do once they're in college where they're getting actual grades? You're not doing your child any favors at all. You need to let them fail. We teach them to work with their hands. Okay, so this is another one that's really important, and it kind of goes hand in hand with chores, but my husband is extraordinarily handy. I am so blessed. If he doesn't know how to do something, he can watch a YouTube video and just go do it. Like, it's really fantastic. And I am not handy, but I am really good in the kitchen. So anyway, my husband is teaching, he's made sure to teach all of our children how to change the oil, how to change tires. He bought a really inexpensive car just a week ago, and he and my daughters are fixing it because it has, I don't even know what's wrong with it, but it has a bunch of stuff that's wrong with it, and they are fixing it. My daughters didn't really know anything about fixing cars prior to this. My husband has a lot of experience, but he would say he's not an expert. But every time he runs into a wall, they look something up on YouTube or they call a friend and they're asking, they're learning, they're making mistakes, but they are doing the thing, and they're doing the thing with their dirty, greasy hands. So they're doing that. My husband is really good about teaching the kids how to do these things, how to make these repairs. Outside, the kids learn how to garden. I am not a great gardener by any means whatsoever, but I'm trying to learn and trying to get better. And I have the kids help me with that. They learn to help in the kitchen. They're using their hands. They are doing the things that need to be done, that one day when they leave and they have homes of their own, they're going to be so thankful that they have this wealth of experience from parents who required them to get their hands dirty. I don't entertain them when they're bored. Boredom is where imagination begins. Okay, so we are in the last few weeks of summer at our home, and the kids are bored. But that's a good thing. Yesterday, I make sure that the remotes are locked up so that they can't, sneak in some TV here or there. But yesterday I looked out the backyard window and they were out there with all of these Amazon boxes that they had taped together and made this giant robot. And they were all in this robot fort together. Would that have happened if they had had their devices in their hands, or if I had just left the remote out and said, well, it's summer, you can just watch movies or whatever? No. That never would have happened. They never would have gotten creative and started doing things. They've been making blanket forts. There was a gigantic multi-room blanket fort this morning that they wanted me to come and check out. All of these things will never happen if your children are constantly being entertained anytime they say that they're bored. Boredom is fantastic. Your children must experience it. It is a great unfair advantage. So if you are sitting here and you are listening to all of this and you are thinking, yes, Ashley, this is exactly what I want, but I don't know how to get there. This is just another reason why you need to go ahead and watch the masterclass. And this is going to set you on the path towards knowing exactly how to put this into motion in your own home. The link is in the description. It's totally free. Okay, so next let's talk about habits of the heart. These shape who they become, not just the academics. I control their media intake. So no TikTok, no phones, no overstimulation. Okay, so we actually, we have gone back and forth on this issue. There were times when we allowed younger children, like I think around the age of 12, to have a phone. Then we said, no, that's too early. And so we have raised the age. Right now, the age is probably around the time that you start driving. This is really important. Our children do not need to have open access to the internet. They don't need to have, obviously, social media. All of these things, they just steal childhood. And there is no reason for your child to have it before they're driving. Even when they're driving, like a flip phone, I would be totally fine with just a flip phone. But, these things, let's be honest here, the vast majority of kids have these. And so if your child doesn't have these things at a young age, or even at like a middle school or lower high school age, think about it. They are getting an unfair advantage, very much so, because their time and attention are not being torn away constantly. I talk to them about the real world: politics, war, theology, culture, justice. I don't hide hard truths. We walk through them together. So we have a habit at the dinner table of discussing all manner of current events. We have argued over theology more times than not at the dinner table. The dinner table is where these conversations really happen. And this is where my adult children are home, eating dinner with us, and the younger children are listening in, not necessarily participating at the younger ages, but we talk about it all at the dinner table. So our children are getting exposure through our worldview lens of everything that is happening during the day. And that is a really good thing. Our children should be hearing about these things from their parents and from their older siblings. They shouldn't be getting their news and their media from their friends or from TV. They should be hearing it from us, and we should be filtering it properly through a strong Christian worldview. I give them lots of siblings and I expect them to serve one another. Okay, so obviously I have given my children a lot of siblings. We have 11 children in the house. I wholeheartedly believe that this is a gift to them. This is not a negative that they have so many siblings. One day when my husband and I are gone, my children are still going to have an enormous support system. They already have it, but it is such a gift. And they are learning every single day, inescapably, how to deal with conflict, how to deal with different personality types, how to deal with the opposite sex. They are learning so many things by having so many people in the house, and by never being like the center of the universe. That is a gift. It's an unfair advantage for sure that our children have. They know They know that the world is not all about them. And they also are learning at a very young age how to serve one another. It is so important. How else are you going to teach these things to your kids? Giving them siblings is one of the best ways. Now, I'm not saying that you need to go out and have 11 children. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is siblings are a blessing. Children are a blessing. And so what an unfair advantage our kids have when they have siblings. I correct them calmly and consistently. Okay, so here's the thing that you need to understand about discipline. If you wait until you have already told your child to stop doing something or to start doing something, until you are angry, you are part of the problem. You need to teach your children that when you say to stop, that means stop now. That means that when you tell your child to go do something, they go do it then. If you are not doing that, you are not fulfilling your job and obligation, and all you are doing is getting angry because your child is ignoring you. Okay, and that is where yelling comes in. We shouldn't be yelling at our kids. There's no reason to yell at your children. You just make sure that they do it the first time. Now, I have had a lot of people ask me in comments of different videos to recommend a book. So the one that I'm going to recommend to you is Parenting by the Book by John Roseman. I will link that in the description below. It is a fantastic place to start and will get you on the right path. But rule number one really is just first time obedience. Like if you teach your children how to do that, then that's it. That's the secret. I filter their friends. I spoke about this in one of my earlier videos. I think it's this one here. I talked about one of the big regrets that I have is that I was not more careful about who my children's friends are. So listen, I know that this probably sounds a little bit controversial, but we all have heard the saying, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. It's true. If your children are hanging out with children who are allowed to use bad language, who don't go to church, maybe who are disrespectful to their parents, or even who don't care about school. If your children are hanging out with other children and that is their worldview, guess what? Your child is going to pick that up themselves. This is not hard stuff. I know as an adult, as a fully mature adult woman, if I start hanging around with women who complain a lot about their children and gripe about their husbands, before too long, I'm going to start doing the same thing. And I am a fully formed adult woman. Okay. How much harder would it be for your own child to not start picking up the behaviors of their friends? You have to be careful who your children are friends with. It is vitally important, but it also gives them an unfair advantage. I expect them to take initiative, not wait to be told. So this is really important. It's important both in the home, but it's also important out of the home. We need to be teaching our children to take initiative. And this is a hard one. This is one that, you could be working on this for years and years and years and not see any fruit, but one day it will click. So one thing that I tell my children, right now I have my younger boys, which is my 14 and under boys. So there's 5 of them. We go and we weed the flower beds at our church once a month. And we signed up to do that so that they could get some volunteer hours. But one thing that I was explaining to them on the way to church is that I want our family to have a reputation of hard work. And so they need to make sure that they are always showing initiative. So that means, at church, if somebody leaves a napkin from snack time on the table, pick it up and put it in the trash can, whether it's yours or not. If you see that chairs need to be put away after a lesson, you need to be the first person doing that. And I basically told them, listen, I want people to think about our family. Nobody works harder than a boofa. And in order for us to get that reputation, you boys have to be hard workers along with the rest of us. People are watching you. They're watching what you're doing. They're watching what you're not doing. So make sure that if you see something that needs to be done, that you're the first person over there to do it. Teaching initiative and teaching about the power of a positive reputation, it's so important. And if you start teaching these lessons young, they will sink in and it will help to form and shape your child. I treat childhood as training for adulthood, not a playground. Okay, so there is a trend, and it has been going on for a really long time. It's the let them be children trend. Okay, that's probably not its official name, but I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. Like, oh, I want to make sure to give my child the best childhood that they could ever have. Well, okay, that all sounds fantastic. Like, it sounds really great. But childhood is training ground for adulthood. Okay, if we want our children to be successful adults, and I think that we all want that here, we need to make sure that we are preparing them for the realities of adulthood. And the reality of adulthood is, it is hard. It's not easy. And sometimes it's not fun. Does that mean it cannot be fun? No, it does not. But it's not all about fun. So if you feel like your life as mom has been that of a cruise director, you need to stop, because you are not training and preparing your children for adulthood. Now, there should always be some fun time. Sure, we want our children to understand work-life balance, for lack of a better word. However, that should never be the primary focus. Our primary focus should be to prepare them spiritually, physically, emotionally to be adults who are successful and who are not just looking for the next thrill. That is not a mature adult, the one that's always looking for the next fun thing. But if that's all your children are doing as children, then of course that's who they're going to be as adults. You need to remember, you are not raising children. You are raising future men and future women. So, you know what's actually unfair? Sending a child out into the world unprepared, because the culture told you to not be too structured. I am not interested in raising passive, screen-addicted children. I am raising future leaders. So if you are ready to build a homeschool that forms minds, strengthens families, and raises the bar, go ahead and sign up and watch my free masterclass. It's linked in the description below. I'll see you there.